pledge allegiance to the flag
the flag
of the United States,
United
of,
States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I will make a call to the audience. Hearing nothing but drilling coming through the wall, we'll move on to the safety share. And I had one, but I'm going to let somebody else speak if they can do it without this interruption behind me.
Well, I'm going to do a safety share. I always love doing safety shares. And this one is just pay attention to your footing and terrain that you're on. You know, we're having a nice safety workshop next week, but in the meantime, we report our recordable injuries on a calendar year basis. And so we're a month and a half into the year. We have one incident, one recordable incident. So our zero is not achieved, but we're still on track for a good year so far. One accident we had was an employee stepping out of one of our, I think it was maybe a combo truck, which is our bigger vacuum service utility vehicle we use in conveyance. It's a fair sized truck and you got a couple of steps to get up into the cab. And the gentleman was, I think he was exiting, and when he stepped on the ground, I don't know if he lost his footing or tripped on something, but he went down and hurt his back. And so it became a recordable because we sent him to the clinic, and I don't know if they prescribed him a muscle relaxant or, I don't know. And that's not here to speculate on that. But when I look back at the past few years, besides, slips, trips, and falls in general have probably been the highest type of incident we've had, recordable incidents. But I'm always amazed at the number of them where it's people getting in or out of a vehicle, not just a big service vehicle, but even a regular vehicle or a regular pickup truck. And, they parked right adjacent to the curb and they didn't realize that they were right there on the curb, and they stepped into just next to the curb and rolled their ankle, or they stepped on a little pothole or something. And so pay attention when you get in or out of a vehicle and watch your step and just avoid slips, trips, and falls in all avenues as possible, because those are probably the ones that are getting us the most. That's my share.
That's interesting, Jackson, because mine was going to be about a slip and fall. Last time it rained here a week or so ago, I was going into Safeway at Swan and Sunrise. I was in a little bit of a hurry, and it was wet inside the door. And of course, they keep their floors so clean and shiny to begin with, and add a little water. And I didn't have very good non-slip shoes on, and I just about upended and caught myself on a shelf coming down. I didn't hurt my backside or anything, but I hurt my hand trying to prevent the fall, and just a combination of not paying attention to the immediate environment and the risks, and being in a hurry can get you. So thank you. And approval of the minutes is next.
If I may, before we go there, I just want to point out to everybody that I did send out a revised version of the minutes earlier this morning. Just some cleaning up of phrasing and typos that Marla so graciously found. The only big change I wanted to notice was on page 2. We removed the first sentence of this paragraph right here. And that's pretty much it. There you go.
Jeanette, I'd just soon have you put that paragraph back in and just make the change to the budget year that was being addressed. So just in that first line of that paragraph, it said for the fiscal 24-25 budget, and I pretty sure we were talking about the 23-24 budget in that line from the prior RAC meeting. So If that's all right with you, I'll ask if there's any other changes or additions to the minutes. And noting Jeanette's changes and the change that I just made, is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Thanks, Eric. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Claire.
Claire, thank you. And all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Very good. And minutes are approved as amended.
Thank
Moving
you.
Sure, thank you for your work on that. Moving to discussion, item 1, Jackson, to talk about the 24-25 budget.
Jackson, you're muted.
Yeah.
You'd think we'd have that figured out by now, but okay, you'd think I would have that figured out by now. At any rate, we've been having discussions, finance and wastewater, various staff between the both parties, but most recently, Ellen and myself and Carmine met to discuss some of our assumptions for next year. And, I'm somewhat surprised, but pleasantly surprised that with the inputs and values that I'm sure we're going to review here shortly, we do not need to request a rate increase next year, which was a surprise, but a good, like I said, a good surprise, pleasant surprise. But I think really it's just best to go over the current workbook, and I'm sure it's going to generate much discussion and much questions, and just let everybody see where we're at right now. But definitely, we've been going through our budget very deep in a very detailed manner, and virtually every aspect of our budget, from chemical, all the big items, labor, wages, that went up because the county just went through a big compensation study, and most everybody got raises, and it impacted us by almost $2 million, I think 1.6 or 1.7. And chemicals went up significantly. Electricity rates went up for our budget. Our repair and maintenance, the supplies for doing what we do to keep the plants running and the conveyance system running, also went up. So all those impacts, and we've increased our CIP, for important reasons. But all those pressures, including showing the future plant, a regional plant down in partnership with Sarita and stuff, all that stuff being in there. The good news for next year is no rate increase is recommended, but it does show some rate increases in the 5-year outlook. I think they're pretty minor comparatively, but let's just run through the rate workbook or whatever. I don't have the agenda in front of me, so I'm not sure how you want to go about it. But like I said, I'm pleased at where we're at right now, but this is still early and preliminary, so we still have lots of conversations to have and more consideration and evaluation. So with that, I hope I can shut up now.
Well, I think, going through the workbook, or maybe the two options that were presented, just to see if people have questions and help increase the understanding of the subcommittee members, and at least the pressure's off, as you say, for the hard discussion about this next year. So if Ellen's here, so Ellen, if you wouldn't mind just kind of leading the way through the workbook and be open to questions along the way, I guess.
Sure. So I've shared my screen, and you are correct. There are two versions of this. This first one that I have up is, as it says across the top, it's the December forecast with the capital expenditures that were presented on 1/19, and that assumes that Sarita pays 25% of the projected costs. So those are the base assumptions that we have going on. I will walk through the items that are relevant. So this one showed the rate. This was the first request by Jackson to have not only the volume rate, but the flat rate, the administrative fee increase, as well as the increase in the sewer utility fee, otherwise known as the connection fees. So you can see here in this scenario, we were increasing the volume rate 1.75% for the next 4 years, as well as
I'm sorry, Alan, not the next 4 years, the 2 through 5 years, because next year is no change.
sorry, yeah, thank you, Jackson. Yes, in 26. Because I'm already living in 25, so I apologize for that, but in 26 through 29, we're showing a 1.75 possible increase in the service rate as well as in the administrative fee, raising the administrative fees from $13 gradually up to almost $14. The other piece that per Jackson's request we modeled was an increase in the sewer utility fee. We were raising that 3%. Jackson had indicated that those costs had gone up, I believe, 25%, and that we were feathering those in to gradually get them to where we believe they needed to be.
Hey, Alan, can we pause just a second? I see Eric has a question.
Certainly. And I don't have my screen up, so I'm looking at my notes on one screen and the spreadsheet that I'm sharing with you on the other. So please feel free to interrupt me.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I was just curious where we came up with the town of Sarita pays 25%. Is that just a number thrown out, or is there some real discussion along that line?
Jackson, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, Eric, so in the discussions, we're meeting regularly with the town of Sarita, and the new facility, the wastewater facility, and the cost of the big interconnect pipeline that would be needed for both of us to use that new plant, they total about $200 million in capital. And the whole reason, in fact, the timing that we have this here is probably being pushed more by the town than it is by Pima County Wastewater. And so we don't have a detail worked out because we're going to be working on the details of who and how we pay for capital, who and how we pay for O&M costs, who and how we divide up the effluent, all the details, important details of such a relationship we're working on as we speak, but it's going to take a while. There's a lot of detail, and that's where the devil's in the detail, they say. But at 200 million, we believe that 25%, it's kind of an estimate right now, but based on the amount of volume they want to have for their future right up front for their expansion plans, based on what we would do, we think that 25% is reasonable. Now, could it be 15 or could it be 35? Most definitely, but 25 is a reasonable assumption at this point. And so until we have better information, I just hated to have to show Pima County Wastewater absorbing all 200 million when we are part of doing it is partnering with the town, and they're going to have to, unless they talk the board into covering the cost and they pay back in some other way, which would change this altogether. But it seems appropriate to expect that they're going to cover their portion of the capital and we'll cover our portion of the capital in this joint venture.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jackson. I agree. I think the details have got to be looked at over time. I'm of the impression, or at least understanding, there's very little development left south in the south end of the county here as you're going below Green Valley and all. And so there's not a lot of operation there. But Saharita has been telling us that they're looking at about a 35,000 increase over the next number of years as they expand the town. And if you drive 19 much, they're building lots like there's no tomorrow. So
Yep.
I'm curious that down the road in the conversations that the town and the district has, that we're very cognizant of what they're looking at as increases in population.
And just to comment on that too, Eric, is, you know, I think your comments are very valid. It looks like Sarita will grow more than the county probably, but the town's biggest direction for growth and expansion is out east, you know, towards Corona de Tucson direction. I don't know if they'll make it all the way up to Wilmont Road or not, but, you know, their conversation is annexing more and more as they go that way. But a lot of that property further east is in the county's DMA. So while it could be Sahuarita town limits at some point, if they annex, it's still by definition and by plan, that would be Pima County sewage to manage and treat. And so that would still be part of the counties, but there is some in that direction that would belong to the town. So it's part of a complex evaluation, like you mentioned.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson and Eric. Back to you, Ellen.
Sure, I'll get to how we accounted for the Sahuarita contribution in a minute, but I wanted to finish up here with the rate changes. So we layered in the sewer utility fee 3% from 26 through 31. We also are layering in the increase in O&M expenses next year. In fiscal year 25, which is next year's budget, we are assuming a 6% increase in O&M expenses. In fiscal year 26, we reduced that to 4%, hoping that not only that inflation will continue to decrease, but the pricing that has accompanied the inflation will also begin to have a slightly downward trend. And then we went back to the 3% going forward. That's our standard assumption. As you get further into the model itself, the net revenues are impacted by all of those items that we've just talked about. In the debt service program is where we accounted for the Sahuarita contribution. Basically, what we did in order to model this is we assumed that Sahuarita would pay 25% of the projected CIP in the year that wastewater is planning to expend that cash. That's the model we chose to use. Obviously, it will change once we have an agreement with Sahuarita on how they will pay for things. But this model allows us to look at it if over time wastewater adjusts how much CIP is going into the Sahuarita plant and those two projects, we will be able to float this number to accurately reflect what we expect Sahuarita to contribute to the CIP. The other decision that we made was that in the out years, we're going to have, after this 5-year plan, that wastewater's overall CIP project comes back down into line with the overall guidance from the county, which is $55 million a year. So that is in fiscal year 2030, that is the expectation. This model does keep us with our overarching pillars, our rating agency above 1.3, and our cash not always at the $50 million level, but close enough that I'm not that concerned about it. So this is the first model that has rate increases beginning in fiscal year 25-26. Do you have any questions about this or should I go on to the next model?
I'd say let's go on to the next one, and probably most questions would be, relatable to either one. So let's look at the nuances of the other one and then come back to general questions and answers.
All righty. So I'm hoping that's large enough, or do I need to make it a little larger? Is that better?
I'm looking at a piece of paper, so
Okay.
it looks okay.
That looks good to me. Thank you.
Ellen, I'm not used to having financial conversations with you if there isn't fine print involved.
Hey, I got old eyes. I got it blowed up on my screen when I look at it, much bigger than this. So I'm just trying to make sure that everybody can follow along. So after, as Jackson indicated, Jackson and I had a conversation with Carmine DeBonis about the rate model that we're using and getting some additional guidance from county administration. And some of the guidance surrounded what would happen if we moved the rate increases not into 26, but into 27. So this is the model that reflects that. So you can see again in the pink, we have shifted so that rate increases will happen in 27. The increases did increase from 1.75 to 5%, and then they were able to be dropped back down in 28. That is applying both the volume and the flat service fee rate. We did, however, leave the utility fee increase at 4% in 26. So that's, Jackson, you indicated there would no rate increases. That's not quite true. If you want me to model that, we'll have to redo this because this does have an increase in fiscal year 26 related to your sewer utility fees. The next item is the 4% for inflation, which we talked about. That remains constant. And then the debt service being paid by Sarita, that also remained the same. What that did is, once again, we are above our 1.3, just barely in this 1 year, that the rating agencies look at. And it also improves our cash, unrestricted cash. We have 2 years where we're slightly below the $50 benchmark that we've sent, but I'm not necessarily overly concerned with those two. So any questions? I suppose the other thing I should mention is that one of the pillars that we talked about the last time that was that we were trying to keep the wastewater debt at 10 years. Anytime wastewater was planning to issue, or we needed to issue more than $70 million worth of debt in a given year, we had to increase the timing of those debt issuances to move them from a 10-year life to a 15-year life. It just was not tenable to the model to facilitate keeping a 10-year model when we were issuing such some significant amounts of debt. Any questions?
I certainly agree with that change. It's the right direction. Anybody have, Claire has one or more. Go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, I just let me turn on my camera. So, I know it looks weird here, but it's space agey, right? Yeah, I'm just curious. I guess since we did think that we needed to have a rate increase, and now we're saying we don't need a rate increase, but apparently we need to remodel to fix the, what was it, the sewer utility fee. I can't remember which thing, but anyway, are we just rolling the ball down the hill, and are we going to be needing a bigger rate increase the following year? I think that's probably what a lot of us are thinking about. Is this the right thing to do strategically, given the long-term debt and needs of the department.
Well, that is, in fact, what happened. You can see here when we pushed the rate increase out from 26 to 27, it increased to 5% instead of the 1.75 when we started in 26. So you do increase the amount of the increase when you push it out further.
And what is the reason, what is the political or other reason that would be beneficial to push out that rate increase?
Well, there are a couple of policy reasons I think that would be entertained. One is, you know, does it make sense to ask for 4-year increases of 1.75? So increasing rates, not in 25, but in 26, 27, 28, 29, going to the board with a plan that says for the next 4 years, we need to increase rates. And this is the price of that. Or does it make sense to say in fiscal year 27, we want 2 rate increases, one for 5% and one for 1.75%. Those are policy, questions. Does it make sense to ask for 4? Or does it make sense to ask for 2? If we go to the board in the spring, which will be, in March or April, in the next 2 months, telling the board that our 5-year plan is that we don't need rate increases for 25 or 26, but it looks like we'll need them for 27. Is that more palatable for the board to be able to ask additional questions, provide additional direction as to, a 5% increase, maybe that's too high. Can you move that forward? Those are all policy questions. And this was the analysis that the county administration team gave to both Jackson and me to model. So that's why you're seeing the 2 of them. So those are, quite frankly, above my pay grade, but that's, the insight that I have to the political landscape for what it's worth.
Thank you. That was actually really helpful.
And Armando, you have a question?
Well, actually, more of a comment. Historically, it's been with my time on this committee that if you go to the board with a high number, they're going to knock it down to what they think is reasonable, even though reasonable isn't a term I would use for them. I think that the lower 4 1-year increases would be more palatable, but that's just my humble opinion.
Yeah, and I guess, my view is if we don't need an increase this year, we shouldn't be asking for one. And waiting a year to see what the landscape is going to be, perhaps the assumptions will change by next year to some extent that doesn't require as big an increase in one lump sum, or maybe other options will come up. Eric, you have comments.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opinion that you use the cooking the frog in the water. I mean, you put him in a cold pot and turn the heat on, and it slowly goes up, and he doesn't realize he's getting cooked. And so you get a 4-year, very modest rate increase, which I think you could sell to the board much easier than you could sell a 5% increase in 1 year. So I'm kind of the vein of small increase each year. The other area, and is the new hookups. And I personally think that that's an area you could raise even a little more as part of the cost. People are buying into an excellent system that's in place and going to provide them service. And so if you increased that another % or two, they're really paying into what's already here and providing some funds for O&M down the road. Those are my comments.
Back to you, Armando. Or is your hand still up from before?
No, I think I lowered it. Let me try again.
You got it.
Am I lowered?
Yeah,
You're lowered.
good, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I guess I have some general questions relating to other aspects of the workbook here, Ellen, but I want to at least give an opportunity to everybody to chime in as far as the slow cooking option that Eric is suggesting, and I think kind of sounds like Armando's in the same slow cooker. And if not, one thing I'm looking at, Ellen, is the agency rating agency ratio.
Which model are you looking at,
I
Matt?
guess kind of both of them, or either one, at least as far as this question goes.
Okay.
All along the way, except as you pointed out for 26, the ratios are all pretty darn healthy, well above the 130. And I guess I'm wondering if they need, that seems to me that that's kind of the engine that drives things is that ratio, and then making sure that all the other numbers are in a position, well, along with the O&M budget. I mean, we want to fund that properly. So everything else is kind of dependent upon where that ratio sorts out. And I guess I'm wondering why we have a target of over 140 for some of these years, and approaching 140 for others, rather than being satisfied with the 130 that's our goal. And there were times when we were, I don't know if the word's happy, but striving to reach 120 in the past. And so is it necessary, and I guess, or prudent, to be budgeting that line at such a high level?
Okay, so the goal, as in the minimum requirement, is 130 set by the rating agencies. So that's not a goal, that's the minimum threshold, that's the floor, if you will. Anything above that improves our profile with the rating agencies and ensures us maintaining a higher credit rating, therefore ensuring that we have the most advantageous interest rates possible. So I don't think you should think of the 1.3 ratio as a goal, it's a floor. So that would be the first thing. Now, with regard to the 1.2 covenant, that related to the senior debt, not the current debt that we're issuing. And that was built into the legal requirements of that senior debt. And quite frankly, I don't have that at the top of my brain to be able to discuss, but we'll be happy to pull that information. Again, that was the floor that was set for that senior debt. It could not go below 1.2. So I want to make sure that we're looking at this from the, and might just be language, or it might just be the way I'm seeing that it's the floor. We must have at least 1.3 as our ratio. Anything above that improves our profile. So those are all good. We do not budget or try to, this is the 1.3 is a factor of math. And if we fall below 1.3, then we take action to either increase the income or decrease the expenditures or modulate the CIP or the debt. If the math works out that it's 1.3 or better, we don't make any additional adjustments to any of the other pieces that are used in calculating that amount. I don't know if I've explained that clearly or if I've just muddled the picture.
For me, I think it's more towards the clear end than the muddled end.
Okay.
Although I guess, I mean, my recollection is there was a time when we were talking about 1.3 as a goal. In fiscal 22-23, it's shown on the far left column of the workbook. The ratio ended up at 1.5. That year it was budgeted at 1.39. What happened to cause an increase like that as far as the actuals versus the budgeted?
Well, your budget is based on what we expect to happen, and your actuals, represent what actually did happen. So we could have had any number of things, and I don't have that in front of me right now, but we could have had higher growth and therefore increased revenue. Could have had more utility fee income than we had anticipated in the budget. Our expenditures could have been lower than what was budgeted. I mean, there are a number of factors, and I'll be happy to pull that analysis for you on 23 if you would like. I don't have that in front of me.
Well, I mean, that was just last year, right? And so my assumption would be that the revenue and the general O&M cost figure is going to be, I mean, revenue, might have been a little bit higher, but general costs we know were definitely higher. I'm wondering if the debt service payment, that's the denominator, right? I mean, I suspect that ended up being significantly lower than what was budgeted. Is that likely or not?
As I indicated, I don't have that information directly in front of me. So I'm going to ask Michelle Malinsky if she does, or if we can defer this so that we can pull the data and then provide you with the accurate information as opposed to recollections.
Okay.
Michelle,
And
happen to have that in front of you right now, or is this something we should take away?
no, we can do that later.
Okay.
And my interest in it is again, when we're talking about budgeting for that number, if it's generally going to end up being actually that much higher in the end, then it seems to me that we ought to take that in as a grain of salt when we're budgeting for this goal or floor or whatever it is we're describing it as.
All right, I'll be happy to pull that together and forward that to the committee.
So one other question I had, every month we see this chart and I assume that the database for this chart is the same as the database you used for the workbooks, and that there would be a correlation between the two that's pretty direct. Is that accurate?
All of the information comes from the financial systems. So there's only one source of truth.
Yeah, okay, good. So in this presentation every month, there's depreciation is shown, but I mean, how does depreciation play into our workbook presentation here?
Ellen, do you want me to take that?
Yes, please, and thank you.
Sorry. Hey, Matt, it's Michelle. So on the rate workbook, this does not include depreciation. This is the cash side. So what department analysis is providing to you is what's in the operating system. Depreciation is a cost of the system, right? We have to be able to, amortize down the cost of those assets and have replacement value. This is just a cash basis, and this is built off of what Ellen was talking about earlier, what the rating agencies are looking at. And what the rating agencies are looking at is the operations and maintenance costs, not including depreciation or amortization. So it is a different view of the system, more of what Jackson would call a cash-based view versus an accounting view. So I don't know if that helps answer that question.
I don't know either, but I guess I'll let you know. So similarly, in this, we see a down in the revenue side, we see a number for capital contributions every year. And it's pretty significant, 8.5 million this year. And yet, I guess because that's not cash, it's
Right.
also not provided for in the workbook.
Yes, that's correct.
And so we can't count that on the numerator side of the ratio.
Right,
Because
because
it's
what a
not-
rating agency wants to know is, it's kind of like if you were getting a mortgage, they want to know what is your income, what are your expenses, and what is the cost of your home loan? And can you cover those? And if you had a blip in the road, would you still be okay? Or if one, car breaks down and needs new brakes, you're not going to be able to make your home payment. So the tests that the rating agencies are doing, they're not looking at capital contributions. That's not any cash coming in the door. You know what I mean? That doesn't help cover the debt payment.
So if somebody else was putting the roof on my house at their expense, my mortgage company wouldn't give me credit for that, and I would need to borrow money to pay for the roof anyway.
I'm not sure I'm following the analogy.
Hey, Matt, let
Jack-
me, because I always appreciate the cash look. This is what I love to see, and not the regular process that includes depreciation. But the reason to take that capital contribution is because basically what that is every year is it's the developers are building developments and putting in more sewer and saying, here you go, Pima County. So I increase my asset value, but it doesn't do anything from a cash perspective other than now I have to pay to maintain it, but I also pick up some revenues from the additional customers using that expanded, capital contribution. So I think that's the right way. And, I always just focus on cash, so it's easy for me to ignore it, but it's a worthy conversation you're having though.
Okay, I appreciate that, Jackson. Michelle, question on this chart.
Yes.
How do the data points in this chart draw from the workbook? I mean, is there a line in the workbook that we can look at and say, oh yeah, there's the peak in 28 versus the lower levels in 27 and 29 and see those numbers? Is that possible?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I had my microphone on already. Basically, these are the payments that are going to be on the row of the rate workbook that says total debt service payments. So before the Sawarita. So I guess in this model, I should apologize. It's the existing debt plus the row below it, but prior to the offset for Sawarita. So, I mean, I'm going to do easy math. If you're in fiscal year 26, instead of the 62,605, it would be 62,665.
Okay, say that one more time.
So if we did not have the Sawarita offset, it would be the row called total debt service payments. Okay, but because this rate workbook currently shows that offset, in fiscal year 26, it's saying that our total debt service is 62,605, 627. If we put Sawarita back, excluded Sawarita, we would have been at 62,665, 627.
655, I think. I thought I heard 665, but it's just $50,000.
I apologize. Yeah. So
it's basically this line right here, total debt service payments, this peachy color line right above the rating agency ratio.
right, just excluding Sawarita in the out years.
Okay, thank you.
On this workbook, does it have any defeasance shown? Are you paying future debt down below? I don't recall.
Defeasance is included. We continue to do 20 million of defeasance. That's part of the model.
Right.
So is that the prepayment section that's shown down below?
Yes.
And the reason I bring that up, because the chart that Matt showed, the debt service chart that was shown, I thought it says without future defeasance. So that changes the numbers a little bit, I think.
But I think it would still be that line that's above, right? It's that line, total debt service payments, does not include defeasance, right?
Right. The defeasance is down below as a cash outflow.
Right. Okay. Jackson, thanks for asking that question. That was going to be my next one.
So just to make sure everybody is clear, it's called prepayment. That's what the defeasance is. It's the prepayment line.
While I'm going over my notes, any other questions or comments from anybody?
I believe Eric has a question.
I believe you're right. Eric?
Yeah, a couple of points. And maybe I'm reading this right and I understand it right. But since the prepayment is below the ratio line, it has no effect on that ratio. Am I understanding that correctly?
Michelle, you want to
Yes.
take that, please?
Sorry, it has no direct impact to the ratio. Where it impacts the
Okay.
ratio is you're prepaying future debt. So the
Right.
future debt being repaid is no longer part of the payments in the debt service payment line. That's kind of a,
That's what I thought.
So
Um,
would that,
right,
would that have
right, if I,
been, would that have been a likely reason then for that 23 number to end up at 150 rather than being budgeted at 139 because we ended up?
really, the biggest difference in 23 is the revenue because interest rates were much higher in 23 than we had budgeted them to be. And so our actuals came in higher. We had budgeted, a nominal amount in 23 for interest, and we received $6 million. So part of the reason that that ratio came in so much stronger is because our interest revenue, one of the components of the calculation, was much higher than we had budgeted it to be.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Further talking, Matt.
Yeah.
I understand the floor of 130. That decision was made by, obviously, not us. It was made by somebody else. And I understand the thought process behind it. I do believe. I know for another board that I sit on, we use 120. And that's fine. I'm wondering that in looking at where we are, and if we went to the program of a little bit each year, if that seems to level out that floor a little more closely than by going in and doing one major one a couple of years down the road. And I'm wondering if that would be a little more palatable to everyone.
I'm not sure I understand this. Are you suggesting that we lower the ratio?
No, I'm not suggesting we're lowering the ratio. I have no idea who set that ratio, nor do I really care who set the ratio. What I'm suggesting is if we use a small increase starting in a year from now and do that over a period of time, it levels out that ratio a little more closely than if you put in one big increase and a smaller one behind it. And I'm thinking that that would be more palatable to not only us, but maybe to the board and to our ratepayers, the people that are paying for our service.
So I think Eric's just given a further nod to the one scenario where it has the 1.75 user fee adjustments for 4 years as opposed to the 5% later, followed by a 1.75. So that's all. He's just continuing to point that out, that maybe has additional benefits, that scenario, but ultimately it's going to be a board decision which way they want to go. Like you said, more policy than anything, but there's good explanation of why we may, or any of us individually or as a group, we may prefer one over the other between these two.
Claire, you have a comment or question?
Yes, yeah, I do. Yeah, I was kind of coming back to the same thing and I feel that I could recommend either one. I'm wondering, Jackson, if this is the type of thing that our committee and then the advisory board recommends one, but gives the other as an option. Would it be helpful to bring this up this year to the Board of Supervisors so that should we ask for a bigger increase the following year, they're aware that of the history. So I don't know, maybe you could speak to how you could envision handling that.
So my opinion is, and Ellen can chime in if she feels necessary, but these options will get vetted more with county administration, who will have the ear of the Board of Supervisors. And I'm guessing, they're not really counting votes, but they're getting an idea of which one the board would feel the most comfortable with. And that's the one that will be presented. But I think there's nothing wrong with presenting both of them and saying, hey, here's two different ways to handle what we foresee as the, budget projections for the next 5 years, or even longer in this case of those charts. And I think personally, I think they'll probably push one over the other and ask for that to be on the agenda. That's my guess. And I don't know, Ellen, if you concur or not.
I believe that that's an accurate statement. I have, as I sent this to this subcommittee, I also sent this to Carmine DeBonis, the Deputy County Administrator, so that Jackson and I can have a further conversation with him so that we can get his feedback as well. That is not happening this week. I'm hoping to secure that for next week.
Okay, so then my next question is, what do we need to decide today? And what do we need to bring to our advisory board? It seems like we don't have a recommendation of one or the other since it needs to go to the administrator, but we have flushed out with your great help, Ellen, to these options. So I think, do you need a motion? What do we need to do today to move this forward?
I would recommend, of course, taking this to the full committee is the next thing, but I think if this is, again, maybe my recommendation, that both are viable options. Of course, finance has portrayed that they're both viable options, but you as a committee, we've already heard a couple, I think Armando and Eric both have stated that they kind of like the slow and steady as opposed to a jump and a push. And so you might want to say that the subcommittee prefers option A or B, however you want to declare them. But let the full committee ultimately vote on it. And to me, it's nothing wrong with saying, hey, both are acceptable to the committee and we would support either one, kind of like you're saying, Claire. But our personal preference, for whatever background and reasons you come up with, prefer one over the other. If we get there, that would be the information we would share ultimately with the county administration and board. But in the end, they're going to decide somehow which one's going to end up on their agenda for approval in front of the public audience.
Okay.
Well, I've pretty well heard from my supervisor that he's not interested in supporting a rate increase this year in light of the general economic environment that his constituents are living in. I don't know whether there's an advantage to making a specific subcommittee recommendation at this point, or allowing the entire committee to receive the same information we have, and we can certainly chime in at our next RAC meeting, as we have today, with personal preferences or recommendations on where to head, and maybe there will be additional information available for that meeting that isn't available today. But I guess my inclination would be to let this ride without a recommendation at this point anyway. but certainly there's 5 of us, and if 3 of us feel strongly about moving forward with a recommendation, we can certainly do that. Eric, did you have additional comments?
Thank you. I'm curious of hearing a report back after the meeting with the assistant county manager, if because I think that person's going to have some understanding of where the board might be looking. I'm in agreement with you, Matt, is yes, the supervisor that has supported, that had put us on this, is not interested in seeing a rate increase for this next year. I'm curious of how the supervisors will look at this, and maybe we need to, on an individual basis, go back to those supervisors that we're representing on this board and say, hey, here are 2 options. If these were thrown out on the table for you, which one would be more palatable to you as a supervisor representing your district?
Yeah, there's 2 avenues to the policymakers. One's through county administration, certainly, and one is through each of us directly to our own appointing supervisors. But I guess both avenues are appropriate, and we shouldn't, I guess, do anything that makes it difficult for administration to approach the board in whatever way it feels is appropriate, but at the same time preserve our ability to do that.
Well, I'm curious, Jackson, you've seen both of these. Is it an either or are you either one palatable to you, or is there one that has a slight edge in your mind?
I mean, I'm both of them are palatable to me. In answer to your question, Eric, I could support either one. I personally prefer the slow and steady 1.75 for the 4 years model myself, because that's just, again, I mean, I can go into lots of reasons, but one of them is that is a pretty very moderate conservative value that is really below traditional inflation values. So it's kind of easier to swallow than all of a sudden, after not having rate increases, to throw a 5% in somebody's face. And especially, who knows, what are the other utilities and what's the rest of the cost for people's lives going to be doing? I like that slow and steady myself, but I could support either one.
Armando.
You know, excuse me. The reason I'm supporting the slow and steady is because of the, I don't know if everyone will remember, but the hoopla that we had to face years ago when we realized that by not having any increases, we were behind the 8 ball as far as getting caught up to our expenses. And the backlash that drew for not having had any increases and all of a sudden needing a large one. I believe it was 7% we asked for and didn't get. Jackson, do you recall that? It must have been about 15 years ago.
Yeah, I know that there's been some, I don't recall, maybe Ellen remembers better, but there was a series of different rate increases. You know, our big push came when we had to do RUMP and spend 600 million in capital. That was unheard of for the county and for the wastewater, but that was a big need that drove up some rate increases. But even before that, when the department struggled They were underfunded and needed some more money, but I can't remember the chronological order of how the requests went and how the approvals went, but there was some realignment, put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, and the numbers that we put forth were slashed down. And and it was funny to me because it didn't even begin to make up the deficit that we were looking at, but that was the way of the board. That's why I'm always leery of coming in with a large number when a small number will do it consecutively.
Claire, did you have additional comments?
Yeah, I did. I have a very similar feeling, and I'm actually meeting with my supervisor, who's new, Supervisor Lee, next week. So I'd have an opportunity to talk to her about this. But I think it's actually good for us as a subcommittee to have a recommendation for the larger board. And it doesn't have to be, a hard and fast thing, but it can at least indicate our which way we're leaning. And I think that'll be easier to describe the differences, and why some of us support that. I also support a slower rise, and going forward this year. And sort of my feelings on this are parallel, Armando, to some degree. I worry that should we come in and it is a surprise to the public that we have a giant increase and there's no obvious reason, it'll be a much harder sell. And right now it's pretty clear there's a lot of cost changes in our economy. I think it makes sense now. It may make less sense later. I worry about us. I worry about us, catching people off guard. So that's my feeling. But I guess I would make a motion that we forward this to the advisory board, and with the indication that, well, maybe we should find out. Sorry, let me not do a motion. I think we should find out who prefers that and figure out what our recommendation is. And it can be just a slight recommendation, but that's what I think.
Do you want to make a motion on that, Claire?
Well, can we ask everybody what they think so I know what motion to make? The problem is I don't know what motion to make.
Do you want to make a motion that people provide their preference, which option they prefer? The 2-time increase or the 4? And everybody
I
can
don't
vote.
think that's a motion. I think
Yeah,
that's
we can
just,
probably just discuss that as we have been. There's some clarity already to a degree, and I'll just reiterate that my position for this next year is that we don't need an increase, and I would not be in favor of one. I think Eric and Armando have expressed interest in doing a small increase for this next year and those ensuing, or not.
no, I don't think so. I don't think Eric has said that.
Matt,
Okay, then I'm just going to speak for myself and say we've got 4 other folks here that can express their preferences.
I'm sorry, can I just make a point of clarity and share the screen yet again? We are not recommending an increase for 25. The one plan that you guys seem to be focusing on the most, the one with the smaller increases, is recommending an increase starting in fiscal year 26, which is not next year, but the following year. I just want to make sure that you're all looking at, because I confused myself at the beginning. Next year is 2025. There is no rate increase happening or being proposed. The rate increases are being proposed in fiscal year 26. So just as a
That was
point of
my
clarity.
understanding.
Okay,
Yeah,
just as a
That was
point of
my
clarity.
understanding. Whoops.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think I
and
was confused on that. Sorry.
yeah, I was too, because initially Jackson was interested in having the 1.75 for this coming year.
Well,
So anyway,
I
we're
was-
just kind of-
Matt, too, I'm supportive of both of the plans that Ellen presented, but I also like the one she just put up that is the slow and steady, the 1.75 beginning in fiscal year 26 for 4 consecutive years. That's the one I lean towards, but I could support either. But I'm also not recommending a rate increase next year.
Okay. So just kind of getting the sense of the subcommittee here. Eric, go ahead with your comment.
Well, again, I'm not recommending a rate increase for next year. And I'm with the program that Ellen has presented. I can live with either one. You know, I have no issues. I think the wastewater people are going to hear from everybody if they see a big raise in one shot. That's all. And I think that that's where they'll have to field those kinds of comments. But I think overall, if we do this next year with no increase, the year after that, start the increases and make them very modest. We can watch that. And if we need to jump it up a little bit, we will have the financial information to back that up. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I know that in our conversation with our supervisor, we were all in agreement that next year we're not looking for an increase, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and that does give us the option to look at the entire situation again next year to reevaluate that 1.75. Armando, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that I wasn't looking to rate increase this year either. I always figured it was going to be for 26 and beyond. My
Okay,
only
good.
concern would be how we sell this to the board. We have a year to prepare them
Yeah.
for such a thing. That's all I had.
Asia.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could take a shot at a motion, and then we can, if nobody seconds it, then nobody wants to do that. But I would move that this committee, vote to move forward these options to the full committee to determine whether to recommend both or one above the other, but to make a recommendation to the board on these options so that these options are, we do give them that information that we have looked at this. So I'm going on now, I guess, into discussion, but that was my motion, that we move these two options forward to our full committee to determine whether to move one or both, one above the other.
Okay, do we have a second for Asia's motion?
I'll second that.
I will second just for discussion. But Asia, I wanted to ask you a question. Oh gosh.
Yeah,
and it just
go ahead.
went away from me. Would the motion go to the committee, but would we be recommending one or the other as we process this through the committee? In other
Right,
words,
I guess oh, okay. What I was hearing is we're having a hard time doing that. I kind of like the that slower the 4 years of slower increases myself. But I was also hearing like maybe it would be good to offer the the two options, either equally or maybe just saying we prefer one or the other. But if we want to do that, I guess in this subcommittee we could, but I was thinking, oh, maybe we just pass both on to the full committee. And then we could have the discussion there, and choose which one.
Oh, no, I agree, and I understand sending both
Okay.
to the full committee. But I was thinking that as a subcommittee, we would send them both forward, but with our caveat of most of us agreeing the 4-year would be the better way to go. But the committee should have, the full committee should have the option of hearing both.
So if I understand, the proposed motion is to move both of the options to the full committee, so that they can determine to recommend both or one, with the subcommittee providing their preference to the full committee? Is that kind of what the consensus is?
Well, that, Asia, as I took it, moved that first part. Armando's seconds and is, I guess, suggesting adding the second part. Claire, you were considering seconding. Would you be inclined to second Asia's motion as she offered it?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what that was, but.
And that was just
Can
to
you repeat that,
pass
please?
to move forward both of the options from as in the workbooks that finance presented to the full committee for evaluation and further recommendation from there.
Yes, I think that's fine. I think we can continue. I will second that. I think we can continue this discussion in the full committee, and maybe by the time we have that, some of us will have had a chance, like me, will have a chance to talk to our supervisor, and it doesn't seem as urgent now that I realize it's a year away. So.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move both of these options forward without a specific preference or recommendation from the subcommittee.
Hold on, Matt, before you
Yep.
go to vote, Asia has her hand up. I don't know if it's still up or if it's a new question or comment.
Oh, I never put it down. Sorry.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, thanks for the catch. So we have a motion and a second by Claire. Is there further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Actually,
Go ahead,
Matt,
Armando.
Actually, I didn't, on my second, I didn't add to the motion. I was just trying to clarify what I thought the motion was.
Okay,
So,
okay, fair
my
enough.
second was good no matter what. It doesn't matter though.
Okay, we have co-seconds here. With,
Right, Armando, high five.
Okay, we'll give Armando credit for the second, and then I'm again inviting further discussion. And hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Very good. Okay, so Ellen and Michelle, thank you for what you've done today. Please do it again for the full RAC meeting later this month, and we'll certainly be interested in any additional information that you can provide us along the way or bring to that meeting.
All righty.
Okay, anything further on the discussion here about
Matt,
the budget or financial plan? Yeah, Jackson.
Yeah, I kind of hate to bring it up, but just because it's bugging me in my mind, and I'm hoping maybe Ellen and her team can research it a little bit more. But in my memory banks, which I learned not to depend on anymore, I also recall that I agree with Ellen's comment. Initially, we were focused on senior debt because that was the priority and everything back in the day. But once we had paid senior debt, I recall 1.2 was our basement or floor. I guess the floor is the right term. But the committee itself, the wastewater advisory committee itself, in a lot of discussions as to why and being conservative and the benefits and all that, agreed on a 1.3 floor for our financial planning and rate workbook and stuff. I thought the 1.2 still was the, statutory isn't the right word, but the debt service agency's requirement. You can't go below it or they get nervous that, hey, you're not going to be able to pay back your debt. So maybe Ellen and Michelle can just double check on some of that language to see if you can find a 1.3 in the language, or if in fact it's 1.2. And we, through this committee, the full committee back some time ago, increased it to 1.3 for these efforts and these exercises like we're going through today. That's my memory anyway.
And
We'll
I'll concur
be
with
happy
that, Jackson, that I remember the committee identifying 1.3 as a goal. Go ahead, Alan.
Sorry, we'll be happy to take a look at what our records say and get it to Jeanette so she can share it with the group.
Great, thanks. Eric, something further?
Yeah, I was just, when we were talking about that ratio, I was wondering if on a quarterly basis, if the finance department can show us where we stand with regards to that debt ratio, so that we kind of get an idea where we're bouncing along on that. Are we at 1.45? Are we at 1.32? If that's too much to ask, I fully understand, but it's just a question.
Let Michelle and I talk about it, and I will get back with you. I don't think that the ask is egregious, but then again, I'm not the one that has to actually do the work. So allow me to consult with my staff, and I will also get that answer back to you.
Thank you very much.
That might just be something that could become a part of the regular monthly even finance report, if it's an easy thing to produce. Okay. Looking at future agenda items, I think we're ready with the motion to take this topic to the full committee in this month's meeting. And I think we'll wait and see, at least my view, wait and see whether there's a need for us to meet afterwards with additional study and recommendation for final approval of the financial plan. Anyone have any differing views about that? Again, no subcommittee meetings to be scheduled at this time. Wait and see how things go in the February RWRAC meeting. That's okay. I'll issue a call to the audience. Hearing nothing.
Matt, I'm going to be the audience right now just because I have to run to another meeting. So I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you all soon. But thank you for very pleasant and positive discussion on this important topic. And Ellen and Michelle, thank you for your getting this here. It was very helpful for everybody, I think. And I think we can continue to believe we're in a good place financially right now.
Yeah, I agree. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Eric, how about Armando? I take yours as a second.
Oh, that's works.
Wonderful. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And again,
Aye.
thank you all for participating today as well, and providing all your expertise and input. we'll see you, what, on the 22nd?
Thank you all.
Yep.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.